All right, here we go.
All right, great. Hey, Tom, how are you? We got a seat. So, all right, well, I want to welcome everybody to the Board of Selectmen meeting for Wednesday, April 3rd. And I'd like to call this meeting to order, our special session. Please all rise for the pledge of allegiance. I pledge
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
So moving on to item number 3, board member comments. So I thought actually I did write some remarks because I just wanted to address a few things relating to the Academy project. So I thought I'd move this into the record. It has been brought to my attention that there is a petition being circulated by a Madison resident that requests the board to call a special town meeting to reconsider the results of the February 15th, 2022 referendum regarding Academy. Certainly, all residents are welcome to exercise their rights in seeking such a meeting. However, after talking to town council and bond council on this matter, they determined it would be improper for the town to take any formal actions that would seek to cancel the project, despite some residents' efforts to do so. They also indicated after initial review that the petition is likely not valid, and this is due to some practical reasons as it relates to the petitioner's request. The town has already issued $6 million of notes in anticipation of construction starting sometime in 2024. The town has committed over $1 million of these funds for the investigation, design, and development phase of the project, and has existing contractual obligations with advisors, consultants, and architects. These expenditures have already been incurred and cannot be refunded. The town is obligated to fulfill representations made to investors in our offering circular dated December 2023. As part of the debt issuance, the town agreed to spend the proceeds in accordance with the federal tax regulations, and that includes spending the vast majority of these funds within the next 12 to 18 months. The petition being circulated is to hold a special town meeting, not a petition to hold a referendum. A town meeting cannot overturn the results of a townwide bonding referendum held over 2 years ago for a project already in process. As with every bonding resolution approved at referendum, the Board of Selectmen has the authority to amend the scale and scope of a project to meet any budgetary restrictions. Tonight, the board will be hearing from the Academy Building Committee on what some of those changes should be in order to stay within the approved budget and remain in alignment with community priorities. We are thrilled that the town has been awarded a record $7.6 million in state and federal grants to pay for this project, significantly more than originally anticipated. This means that Madison taxpayers will only be funding roughly half of the approved $15.9 million project budget. Any plans to use grant monies for costs over $15.9 million are likely to require additional voter approval. The building committee will be presenting to us at a later date a recommendation outlining the estimated funding needed to complete all desired renovations in their entirety. So for our agenda tonight, the Board of Selectmen will be listening and learning as to the findings of the building committee and will not be taking any formal action on possible future funding plans this evening. So, and we're excited to just here we are for this project that we're all anxious gets moved forward. So I don't know if any other board members would like to make any comments before we move into the presentation.
I guess I would echo what you just said, Peggy, in the sense that I'm thrilled to hear, what the committee has come up with. I know that there's been a ton of hard work from the committee and over the last 18 months. And I certainly want to thank them for rolling up their sleeves and really driving, I think, this effort. It's not easy, we all know, and we've got multiple building committees going on at the same time, but certainly very much appreciated. And the grants, my goodness, wow. I mean, what was it, 7.6 million in grants? Fantastic. So I'm thrilled.
Great. Any other comments?
Yeah, I'll just add, it's unfortunate that we're having to have conversations about adjustments that we might need to make to the project. But if we go back in time and remember how much time we spent discovering what the community wanted, how consistent that messaging was from the community regarding a community center, not to overuse that word, And culminating in a referendum vote that really wasn't even close. It was really quite definitive. I think it is now our job as the Board of Selectmen to figure out how to deliver that project that the community clearly over a long period of time articulated that they wanted. And I know it's my first desire to see us build out exactly what was voted on and to explore every possible option to get us to that point. If the conversation at some point turns to value engineering, changing to live within the budget, then so be it. But that is very much my plan C or D, not my plan A.
Okay, great. Any other comments? No? Okay, good. Well, with that, I will welcome Colliers and the architect, our architect, Tom O'Carey, I guess is here. We have several people in attendance, just to maybe introduce Joe Valentine, the chair of the building committee. And I don't know if there are other building committee members here. No? Tom O'Carey is the architect that we've hired on this. And Colliers, I'll turn it over to Mark Stolenka to do a presentation from what the building committee's recommendations are at this stage.
Great. Thank you, Becky, and good evening, everybody. Jeannie, can you pull up the presentation? I think this is much easier, not that presentation.
I don't like the Zoom camera thing either, but unfortunately it does help with people at home to know who's speaking, so,
We know how many people are online too.
yes. Well, we got quite a few, like 50? Oh, great, yeah.
Good.
Well, while the presentation's being loaded up, I did want to introduce Tom Arcari and my colleague, John Koplis, who will be participating in some level in this presentation that we wanted to bring to you all today, which really is more of an update as to where things stand relative to the $15.9 million that we voted on back in 2022. As we know, it's a fairly volatile construction market, and a lot has changed in the market, which is driving a lot of the conversation that we're having this evening. I'm stalling as much as I can to get to the presentation. Most of the meat is documented versus coming out of my mouth.
Let's see, Jeannie, can you hear us? She's in my office. But
I'm having technical difficulties. Bear 1 second.
It wouldn't be a meeting without.
Let's blame it on the rain.
I will say that this takes me send that, was it sending that?
There's just things that didn't work for being on.
Yeah, there was a large file and just getting it from
Yeah, yeah.
every road to here was not easy.
Yeah.
I could have driven it here quicker.
Okay,
There we go.
Okay, great, thank you.
Okay, thank you, Gene. You can go to the next slide. There's about 18 slides here that will walk us through. Okay, so what we're going to talk about tonight is what the building committee has done over the tireless building committee has done over the last several months. You're really reconciling the latest round of estimates against the budget that was approved back in 2022. And they took a holistic look at the building and said, okay, how can we prioritize the dollars we have versus what we really need for this building? As you know, it's been vacant for a very long time. It shows a fair amount of blight. We're looking it up several times, and the board went through it somewhat recently. It really needs to be updated and refreshed. And with $15.9 million, you can get a fair amount of work done to that building. And we just want to highlight what the committee is targeting over the next several months before we go into the bidding and the construction phase. And you can see they really broke it down into 3 major priorities. Right? First being just to seal and protect the building, right? What you see from the street when you drive by, making sure that the rain doesn't get in, the building looks attractive, there's a curb appeal to it. I mean, it's right in downtown Madison. It's the last thing you want to see, the current condition when you're driving by. Second was making it code compliant, right? Getting it up to the current code standards, the regulation, the ADA compliance, making it a safe building to walk into. And the last priority, with whatever funds are available, is really turn as much of it into some level of programmable space, something that can be used by the community. So again, that was the priority list that they targeted. And I'll talk in greater detail throughout the presentation as to what each of those priorities look like. And you can see, again, it was $15.9 million. And this committee was tasked with what can we get for the $12.180 million. Next slide, Jeannie. So again, I've got better looking images beyond this, but again, in terms of what priority one looks like, from an overall envelope perspective, it's a new roof, new insulation, new exterior windows, new refreshed exterior, repointing, graffiti being removed, all new state-of-the-art, energy efficient mechanical, electrical, plumbing systems, fire protection, low voltage, communication, building controls, really a state-of-the-art HVAC building. Next slide. Again, not to highlight anything too attractive here, but just in terms of some of the HVAC upgrades, new mechanical equipment, new boiler, new air conditioning, ductwork, piping, radiators, all the state-of-the-art mechanical systems, new lighting fixtures, energy efficient lighting, control systems to minimize the energy usage, new plumbing fixtures for the bathrooms and other plumbing related spaces. And again, a new fire suppression system. This is for the entire building, all 3 levels, all 55,000 plus or minus square feet of the building would have the new MEP systems. Next. In terms of the envelope, again, a new 30-year roof. The existing penthouse, and you can see that photo to the right is from the inside. That gets demolished and infilled, and again, a new 30-year roof is installed. All new energy efficient windows, new exterior doors, masonry repairs, repointing, again, making it look like a relatively new and refreshed building. Next. Now going to the inside, again, the image you see to the left is one of the classrooms. You see a lot of flaking paint. A lot of that paint is lead based. There's asbestos, PCBs. All of that is abated and removed. There's a new sanitary septic system that's required, a much larger than anticipated system that would accommodate some of the other town buildings that was unanticipated originally. A new entrance and elevator with ADA accessibility. So if you've been in the building, you know you have to walk upstairs to get into the building. That wouldn't be the case. And then, you know, a regrade and access to the building from the parking lot is also provided. Next. Again, these images depict top right is elevation looking at what the new entrance would look like. Middle top is the aerial with the plane looking at that new lobby entrance with the elevator. If you, the picture you see down on the bottom left is the courtyard. That would be infilled and become interior space. And that's depicted on the plan with some soft seating, a loungy type area. And then the lowest level, if you haven't been in the building, you may not know that you cannot get from one end to the other. The corridor would be added, making it the connection seamless from one side to the other side. So these are all currently in the project as the building committee has conceived this these dollars. Next. Priority 3 was, okay, with what we have left, what do we want to do and how do we want to prioritize, you know, the $1 million or so that's left in the budget. And they took a look at, again, more larger community type spaces. So the gymnasium, the large gymnasium is a space that is high on the priority list. The recital hall, if you know that building you walk in, you've got that really attractive, cute looking theater space. The art room, which is on the upper level. And then some necessary spaces for some level of security and facilities management. So somebody will have to man the building. So creating some space for that operation. And then any other programming space that budget allows. Again, the construction market is volatile. We see good bids and we get lower than what we're anticipating bids from contractors. Maybe we can afford some additional programmatic space. Next slide. This is an image of the existing gymnasium cleaned out. Again, tired. The base project would include new flooring, new finishes, new backboards, But what it won't include is any new bleachers or any stage improvements. So the stage that's there was largely the stage that will be there, cleaned up, but no additional stage features. But again, for youth sports, for any sports for that matter, for any use, it'll be new windows, a lot of daylight. It'll be a fairly attractive space to be in. Next slide. The recital hall, or that small little theater facing Boston Post Road. Again, the two images you see up there, one is facing out towards the street, the other is facing towards the theater. That would be renovated with ADA accessibility, and you can see in the plan in the lower right, there's a ramp that would lead up to the back side. In addition to the stage, there would be two community rooms on either end that would open up into that theater space. So you'd have a lot of renovated, refreshed, usable space in that little theater area of the building. Again, all new mechanicals, all new electrical, plumbing, windows, you name it. Next. The art room up on the upper level, is a disaster, as you can see from the photos. That would be renovated, new casework, new finishes. ADA accessibility, again, there isn't a flat spot in this building. So there's another ramp that would be installed that would allow wheelchair folks to get into the building, into the space. Again, new finishes, occupiable with new lights and new plumbing, new HVAC systems. That was a priority. Next. So what wouldn't be included, right? So, when you've got a deficit, some things unfortunately can't survive at this point. So the building committee made, tough decisions. These aren't easy decisions to make, but providing built out spaces for town departments, geothermal was something that we would have liked. That became cost prohibitive. A new playground, which you see from the image on the top right. New finishes for the spaces outside of what I spoke about in terms of the art room, the theater, the gymnasium. We'd have, we wouldn't have new finishes. We would have, new paint or new flooring or new ceilings or new doors. And then the site work would be limited to just really getting access to the building from the existing parking lot. We would really have to cut back on what we do with the site enhancements. The design team came up with a really nice plaza site features, but again, with the limited funds that we have, or the funds that we have, the building committee needed to make some tough decisions, and they decided we just needed to get to the building, get into the building. So those are some of the things right now that unfortunately, due to the budget constraints, can't be afforded at this time. Next. With any project budget, there are dollars allocated for scopes of service that can always move around. And one of the line items that we created back in 2021 was furniture, fixtures, and equipment. So everything that you're sitting on fall under that category. And we identified about $700,000 worth of that equipment. If that money was transferred from what's called FF&E to construction, it might be able to afford some of the things that we couldn't include, which is finishes to some of the balance of the spaces. Like you see the two rooms up there, the classroom and the corridors, maybe able to finish those out with paint, flooring, and new ceilings, doors and hardware. Some millwork could potentially be added into the project. So again, you can do a fair amount with $700,000, and that was something that the building committee thought we might be able to use those funds for. But again, when you take those funds and transfer them to construction, it leaves a void in the budget, and any desires to bring in new furniture would have to be funded through a different source, or you can always relocate existing furniture. So that's always another option too. We do have moving costs built into the budget. So next. These are just some existing photos for those that aren't familiar with the building, what it looks like today. Great building for many, many years. I'm sure many of you might have even attended school there, but it's been largely vacant for, I think, 20 years nearly. And it looks like it's been vacant for 20 years. see a typical classroom, the gymnasium, recital hall, the exterior. Next, Keith. The bathrooms are really in tough shape. There's an old skylight there. You can see some of the finishes peeling just because of the lack of, HVAC, lack of ventilation, water infiltration. Again, this building definitely needs a fair amount of work. Next. So just to recap in terms of the priorities, you can see some of the values. Those values that you see on the screen come from the estimates that we received from 2 independent estimators that were reconciled. So for us to carry the bill, the priority 1, which is essentially the HVAC system, let me just something incorrect. The new roof, the new windows, the exterior improvements, the brick, the gutters, the drains, that's roughly $9.8 million. A lot of that is being driven by the mechanical, electrical, and plumbing costs. Mechanical costs are skyrocketing, not just here in Madison, but everywhere. The priority 2 projects, which include the new entrance, the new sanitary system, the asbestos abatement, some interior demolition required. That's roughly $1.3 million. And then we've got $1 million essentially to cover the rest of what I identified in priority 3, which was the gymnasium, the art room, and the recital space. So that gets us to the 12.180 construction budget, which is out of the $15.9 million total project budget. Next. This is an impossible to read schedule, but that looked really clear on my monitor. What you see there graphically depicts the major phases. So the blue bar you see up top is the design phase, where we are today. That reddish bar you see there, or orange, is the bidding phase, when the contractors submit bids for the project. That long burgundy maroon color is the construction phase. So that red vertical line you see represents where we are today in the design phase. Thank you, whoever's doing that.
That's right behind you.
Oh, you can point to it if you want. It's true. So there's where we are today in the design phase. We still have probably 4 months of design left. And we will be occupying the building sometime in the summer of 2026. Next, please. And as always, this committee has worked tireless over the last, I don't want to say several months, but year plus, led by Joe Valentine. And the folks you see listed here, meeting multiple times a month. And again, not making easy decisions, putting in the hard work required to get us to where we are today, and making sure that the $15.9 million is not encroached, and the town gets the best that it can for the approved budget. So thank you, Joe, and the committee. And that is all that we have to present.
Thank you very much, Mark. I'm sure probably, I know I have some questions. I don't know if board members want to weigh in. Joe, do you have any color you want to add to the presentation?
The only thing that I would like to say one thing, that, we're looking at rooms here and pieces and masonry. You have to remember, we're building a building that's going to last 50 years. This is going to be a place that bring the community together. There'll be a place where there'll be, that could create jobs, catering and maintenance, and it's and doing other programming. It's more than just it'll be more than just the rooms. We actually picked what the interior design, just to create, we picked that design because it creates a sense of community as you walk into the building. So, as much as the 15 million and the rooms are important, let's remember this is going to be a community center that's going to probably outlast a lot of us here, outlast me. So, thank you.
Can I ask a question?
Well, public comments at the end. So right now, this is board discussion. So this isn't a more of a.
No questions.
It's a part-
Okay.
Okay, good. So,
Okay.
all right, yeah. So So I think this is an opportunity for us as a board to talk about where we are in the process. And given where we are with the budget constraints, obviously there's gonna be a need for additional funding if we wanna deliver what everybody envisioned, right? And I wanna thank the committee, because I know it was a tough decision to set priorities, right? When we look at, obviously, this budget right now will make the building, make the building alive again, and it'll get modernized systems in it. It'll have community spaces open. Unfortunately, it doesn't allow for some of the build out of the town functions, which we were excited to include in the building. It doesn't allow that right now, right? But the goal is ultimately to make that happen if we can get there some way. But I think the priorities, and I kind of went back to what we talked about, in these presentations to the public 2 years ago when we went to referendum. Like, why a community center? And I look at this and I think about the priorities you set with the current budget and kind of where we are. And the number one was preserves a treasured landmark facility and surrounding green space. That was one of the goals of trying to do this project. And we're doing that. We're preserving this, right? Repurposing a vacant, derelict building that's still sitting in the heart of our downtown, unfortunately, 2 years later, while securing it for public use. Everything that you presented accomplishes that goal. So we're bringing the building alive again. Provides needed space for high quality arts, education, recreation, and cultural events. There's going to be, within this budget, lots of space open. It's not going to be all of it, but it's going to, some of the larger spaces that people were excited about, the art room, the small auditorium in the front, and then the gym, which we heard a lot from people about the gym. And I know that pickleball is anxious to get going into that gym. So it is going to provide that. It's achieving that. Offers public access to a theater and a large gymnasium for indoor concerts, meetings, events. It's not going to be as all the bells and whistles we would have wanted right now, but it will be there. It'll be open. It'll be space that we can use and have events in. And then solve space for certain departments while also avoiding future costs. We're not quite there yet on that, unfortunately. We're going to try to get there, right? But this budget doesn't allow for that. So we as a board have to weigh in. Do we want to achieve that sooner by going out and getting approval to spend more money? Or do we want to, move the project forward as is? And then it talks about, this presentation, you can go back and, all these other things it does for the community. And these are the reasons why people wanted to support the project. So as much as I know we're all a little disappointed that we're not getting what we all dreamed of getting out of this in the first crack, I think there's a way to get there. And I think it's an incredible start because it's going to bring this building back to life and save it. Because if we don't make some decisions soon and move forward, it's going to get to continue to deteriorate. I think the timeline you talked about, in my understanding, is in order to get us on a path to renovation, we just need to move forward with the construction design plans. And then our board has to decide, we might luck out once this goes out to bid. We might find there's another $500,000 or $1 million out there, when the bids come back, that we can apply to finishing more rooms. As we learned through the school project, the bids came in below our estimates. We're in the Wild West right now when it comes to construction budgets and costs. So we can evaluate and see where we are, where the bids come in. And the timeline that you presented had bids coming in around, what was it? September-ish. So in September, it's no longer speculation. This is it, right? And so we could end up in a better situation, or we might not be in as good a situation. So, but we'll know more when we have those bids on the table.
We were with the school.
So, right, exactly. So, and the difference with this project is the school construction authority required us to have the full budget in place to go out to bid. And I think that's where people didn't understand in that situation. We were trying to assure the state that we had all the prerequisite money needed to go out to bid. We don't have those restrictions, obviously, on this project. And we can structure this as bid alternates and all this other stuff if we were to proceed. So, so those are some of my initial thoughts on seeing this. I did have an opportunity to chat with Mark and Joe prior to this, so I know you guys are absorbing this a little bit more. But want to open up for discussion and any questions you have so far.
Well, I mean, we all had an opportunity last week to tour the building, I think for the second or third time. And I think, well said, Mark, that the building is deteriorating. The longer we wait, the worse it's getting. We saw some water damage. Listen, we saw the active shooter drill issues that are still in that building, that are all over the building. it's getting worse as we wait. So I think, the pressure is somewhat on to get things moving. I guess as I was walking through the building, there was a lot of really cool features. These big, broad hallways, the tin roofs, are amazing. And I guess I didn't hear a lot in the presentation or conversations about historical preservation. And I know that was a part of the original RFP. Can you guys just comment maybe a little bit on that for us so that we get a perspective on, because I know that was a part of the voters. They wanted to preserve the building. And there's some really interesting features in that building that I think we all feel pretty important to preserve.
Can I speak from here? Or do I?
You can do whatever you want.
So most of the spaces will be preserved. So the open classrooms that are gonna be retained as multi-function spaces. There was a picture of one of the classrooms in the presentation, all of that trim and thin ceilings, that will all remain. New ductwork will hang below it. So you're gonna generally see most of the spaces preserve their natural character. The only spaces that we don't have the luxury of doing that are some of the spaces that are being converted to offices in our concept. In particular, the offices for the youth family services spaces, just because as a result of how they function and their programming needs, there needs to be acoustical separation between those spaces. So we have hung ceilings in those spaces between the proposed new partitions. But other offices like Beach and Rec's offices can actually maintain the volume of the space and have open partitions, space to space.
But in that first build out, as sort of Peggy was inferring, we're not moving forward necessarily with the build out of the town spaces. Would
Correct.
that be a second piece to do the second ceiling?
Yeah, so if that build out's not gonna be done, those existing classroom spaces will just stay as they currently remain, and there'll be a multifunction classroom.
So the open spaces.
Open space.
basically.
Yeah.
We're also working with town staff to identify additional finishes that we could leave, remain in some spaces and get on the same page, get into alignment with them regarding the provision of HVAC systems that are, maintainable and durable and long lasting. So both the effort to preserve the existing spaces architecturally, as well as make sure that the new systems we're putting into the building not only provide the function that we need, but also sort of preserve the aesthetic of the spaces. They don't compromise that.
So just building on that point though, back to it, as we were walking through the building, in the art room, one of the things that I think we all sort of went, was the skylight.
Yeah.
There was 3 or 4 skylights in there and there was discussions about whether we retain that or not retain that. Where are we in the current thinking right now?
I believe the current plans in that particular space show the skylights some being removed and some being replaced. There
There
are
will be some there though, is that what you're
Yes,
saying?
there's a
Okay.
source of water infiltration problems there. And again, we want to ensure that any plan we put together protects the asset overall, long-term. And, we want to pick and choose, use diligence as to which skylights we will keep.
Like that back in the room.
Yeah, right, no, I know.
I get it.
And I think also in just conversations with building committee, they haven't gone through on David had talked about a page turn level to all of it. So there's not been a final sign off on, and they've gotten a lot of good feedback. We provided feedback based on
Yeah.
So there'll be a few more iterations over the next couple of weeks, on some of these things and trying to preserve. I think the messaging is about preserving more and replacing less. But that's a iterative process that we're going through, and also with the town space, thinking about how can we still get some of the things that the town might need if we're gonna be pursuing that additional funding, because right now that's not in the budget. How can we do that while preserving things better and making better use of space?
Yep. It's helpful, thank you.
Tom, how will What will be the appearance of the building externally? When people are driving by, how will it look different? How can you paint us an image of that?
Well, it will look different in that the historic character of what I'll call the South Building along Route 1, which was the original building, will be restored in a complete way. All of the exterior trim will be updated and painted and refreshed. All of the masonry will be cleaned and repointed. The windows will be new. The building itself is really going to retain its original character. In addition to that, we're proposing some accent lighting on the building to really make it a little bit of a gem sitting there on the green. The Academy side of the building, Academy Street side of the building will be cleaned up and restored as well, including some of the, I guess we could say Art Nouveau frescoes that are on the east side of the addition, the gymnasium addition that was put on a later date. And then the new entrance, which will face west, we're actually, to create the new entrance, we're removing an entire classroom bay and we're creating a glass entryway. In architectural terms, sometimes this is referred to as a hyphen. What it does is it creates a break between different vintage of architectural features. So we will now have the original building sort of set apart by this glass sliver entrance, and then the addition, the sort of mid-century addition we put on it to the left.
I think it would be helpful to put that slide up again, Jeannie, that just shows the entranceway, because I think this is something that when the committee had talked to us last month, they were kind of looking at two different options, right? And that was where you start saying, we're not really getting what we thought we were gonna get, you know, because the cost-effective option was not really.
And this is
that-
good, this is
yeah.
good.
So this, in the budget that we have, we will have that beautiful single level entryway atrium type vision that people had expectations of. And I think that was something that, when we first heard this, we thought, we're gonna lose all this, but we can still have all this based on the budget that's presented right now with the plan.
Correct. And as a part of that entrance scheme, again, this is the original building. We're terminating the portion of the mid-century addition. We're cutting that out and creating this entrance. And what's unique about this entrance is that we're putting the elevator and the stairs inside the building, as opposed to putting stairs and an elevator outside of the building. If we put the stairs and a ramp on the outside of the building, it would require everyone to use the stairs to go up a level to then get access to the elevator. Whereas here, by removing this portion, you enter the building at grade. So anybody with a physically challenged can enter the building right at grade, get access directly to the elevator, and that would provide access to all 3 floors. As Mark mentioned, the lower levels of this building and this building are not connected. So as a part of this plan, we're creating a connection that also connects with the elevator. So the elevator will make all 3 levels of this building 100% accessible.
So it's like a raised ranch. So when you walk in, you either have to elevator
You can't
or
shift. You can't-
stair up and down.
you can't-
So if I can give you more information, the historic building, the main level is up from grade half a level. It's kind of like a raised ranch. To be honest, I don't know what architect designed the raised ranch. I wish if I could go back in one time, I would take care of that. But, so yes, it is a mid-level. So to get into the historic building, all of the entrances require you to go up half a level, and you enter into a stairwell, and then you have to go down a full level or up a full level to get to the other floors. So this will allow allow access directly at grade. And it's really the best solution. The building committee did significant diligence on this. We actually had an entire second design put together. But the cost benefit just didn't make sense. And at the end of the day, the building committee voted and insists that this is the right long-term solution for the building. And it's better to put this infrastructure in place now so that, because if you don't do it now, you can't go backwards. In the future, you can always fit out a classroom or fit out an activity space, but this would never get done if you did it the other way now.
So I think, I'm struggling to engage in a lot of conversation around a compromise when we don't know what the no compromise is.
The end game.
And if, so we voted on two things. We voted on a community center that we thought was gonna cost 15.9 million. And we voted on a way to fund that community center, which is to borrow 15.9 million. This compromise is a product of the thinking that the $15.9 million budget is fixed and immovable. And I think we need to understand what the stretch is from 15.9 to the project as voted on before we get really engaged in a compromised version of the project. Now, we may find out from residents that no, 15.9 is a hard budget. We don't want to see any more spent. But we may also find out that the community says, look, as long as you don't spend more of our property tax money, which is what the bonds are, we're willing to let the project grow in budget, use other funds for it, for instance, the grant money, and leverage that grant money more effectively. I don't think we know that yet. I think we really need to understand what that is before we start talking about where the compromises are. And
So
it's unique for us because we've never really gone down that road. Other communities have. Other communities have gotten into projects, discovered that they were going to be more expensive, and gone back to the taxpayers and said, will you allow us to increase the budget? And they've done it successfully, I think.
And recently that's happened, but I guess you mentioned a compromise, like, I don't see this plan as compromise. To me, this is just sequencing. We're moving forward with what the budget allows currently. And then we can keep going if we get approval from the voters to spend more, right? If we decide to go that next step. But I feel like, it's not, there's no nothing. I mean, we have to proceed with this base renovation because it accomplishes pretty much what we said we were going to give to the voters and what we gave to our investors.
There's also an opportunity too, as we talked about earlier, that who knows with the bids could come back under like they did with the school. And then that affords us the ability to do other things. So, to me, it's an opportunity for us to keep the ball rolling, move things forward, and figure out sort of the end game as we go. I think we're all kind of saying the same thing.
Yeah, no, I mean, I don't think that, it's a sequencing thing, we're gonna have to start with what we currently can afford and then hope to get funding to continue to completion.
If I could contribute 2
Yeah.
cents, I would just say if there's anything we've discovered in this process, and my team is discovering on all of our projects, and we do a lot of projects, is that time, especially today, time is worth money. In the last 2 years, we've lost 15 to 20% construction costs, easy. The cost to do everything is escalated, and it's just been based on economic changes over the last 2 years, and it's been pretty dramatic. I'm pretty sure Mark's company is experiencing that across the whole spectrum. So if you have dollars that you can contribute or you can put to stabilizing the asset, right? Getting the asset secured so it doesn't experience any more deterioration. And you do it in a way that allows you to build upon it If additional funds come to the table, whether it's today or it's 3 years from now, I think taking advantage of the time and having that money in hand, and stabilize the structure, make it compliant, code compliant, I think that makes really good sense. And then there are some potential options that would, I mean, we've already done a lot of the design work. So you could bid the extras as ad alternates, and if the bids come in favorable, you could choose what you spend the money on. And if the bids don't, then obviously you can't have any of that additional work. But I think it would be a good idea if you have funds in hand and you have enough budget allocation to stabilize and preserve the building, that would be a good idea.
And I'm not proposing that we put the project on pause while we figure this out. I think so long as we are not moving forward with a decision that then limits our
Finishing it,
choices
right,
down the line,
Right.
then, then I think we're okay. And some of this early work is basic and common to any pathway.
Any design, right, exactly.
So I don't want us to just settle on this as a plan moving forward. This is all we're gonna do, and we'll figure out how to get the other money some other way, some other time. I'm really uncomfortable with
Well,
that.
And-
But I like this point though that you just made, Tom, of the stabilize and make code compliant. So at least it's moving the ball forward with, let's get the building, sealed in plastic or sealed in a fence or whatever we're gonna do, right? But make sure that the water's not coming in and the rats aren't, and the bats that we saw. Literally, it's kind of gross right now, so we need to work on it.
Now, I do want to ask one clarifying question just for myself. So we have the 700,000, the FF&E, and we're saying, that covers whatever it covers. I mean, we've been in the building and it is not good. So those rooms that we're saying aren't getting carpet, paint, any of that, I mean, does that mean we're just closing the door and there's paint peeling off the wall and the ceilings?
No, we're scraping the paint, we're removing anything that's hazardous. It just,
Code compliant.
yeah,
stuff.
Okay, so
it just wouldn't get to the
windows,
carpet
the
or
HVAC
the
system
paint.
installed everything.
It was-
Right.
Really like a raw space, and then you can go in
So that,
and paint it and put carpeting, whatever, you're not disrupting the rest of the building.
Okay, but it's not like a room somebody could not.
No, you can go into it.
Okay,
It's just not gonna be finished for
Very
use.
right.
But I think I would think that decision and could be made later, right? In terms of the FF&E, like right now you go out and then you can apply that to some of the alternates as they come back. So you can just have all these other projects that, hey, depending on how the budget comes out, we can add this, we can add that. I think, just to comment a little bit on Bruce's point, I think that we all want to know what the budget, if we get this done in the next 12 to 18 months with the construction, what would it cost to do everything that we wanted? And the committee's
Yeah.
working on that. So they will be coming back to us and they're almost there, right?
Mhm.
I think you
Yes.
wanted a little time to do that kind of page turn thing. I wanted to weigh in a little bit on the town space and work with my staff to make sure that we're alignment about what, the departmental staff, the office space and things like that would be. And so that would happen over the next couple of weeks. And then I think they could come back and say, okay, we need X amount of dollars to finish this, right? And then I think the timeline, I did have a brief conversation with town bond council about, okay, if we had to get approval for this, and this has to do with our bonding resolution, that grants received have to be netted off the bonds. And we have to get approval to appropriate more money to the project. So he's better able to articulate this than I am. So if we have to go down that route and say the board says, whether it's $2 million, $5 million, some number, the board feels like we want to go down that path to get approval for the extra money. The project keeps going. They have their design plans and everything. We can look at that timeline. So if we were to make that decision this month, it would basically, we would be looking at some sort of voter approval in June, and that would be the best case scenario, right? So then beyond that, you'd have to make a decision when you would want to do it. And we can talk about all those timelines. So that would be where the project will keep moving along, they're getting ready to bid, they go out to bid. We go out to the public and say, hey, we want to be able to get the full thing done in one package right away, and get approval or not approval. So we'll talk about that at a later meeting, but just to give you a sense, we'd have to move pretty speedily if we were gonna try to get something out like before the summer, which is not an optimal time to have a standalone referendum, and then we'd have to have the conversation about, do you then put that on the November ballot, which has complications, because now you have to go to the state to get approval for the question, so you're basically having to finalize the question by the first of September, so. So that's a little bit on the timeline.
I've had the pleasure of serving as a liaison between this Board of Selectmen and Joe Valentine's Building Committee. And it's been inspiring to me to watch the chemistry of the committee members and their passionate desire to enhance and enrich this community through the building. They've agonized and struggled with some of the different difficult decisions. And tonight, I'm so pleased to have the selectmen hear this progress report. As far as I'm concerned, the committee is on the right track and should continue onward, carry on while we, the selectmen, talk about additional funding possibilities. But in terms of a progress report, I'd say carry on. Keep rolling.
The timeline for the rough timeline for the committee is to do the detailed investigation of which rooms go where, and the input to that has to come from the town for the town offices. So that's a component, and then go to Tom and say, we want you to design the whole project, and how we pack, and depending on when we go forward, how we package that into pieces, whether it's a 15.9 piece that we know we have funding for, and then some smaller pieces, or if we get June comes and we can do the whole project all at once, then the design is complete and we just do it all at once. But I don't see anything, I haven't heard anything here that's going to slow our progress down to get the good design complete at whatever time frame that Tom has, but that would be into June or July.
So I just want to put a really fine point on what I was trying to say before. As we move forward with Tom, with your work and with the committee's work, the test on all of those decisions should be, does it preclude the project from executing on part of the original project as envisioned back in 2022? And if it does, that should send up a flag and say, okay, we need to address that. If it doesn't, then we're doing the basic work that we need to do, foundational to the project in any direction that it would go, and that's fine. But we can't get 6 months down the road and say, oh yeah, you can't have the skylights you thought you were going to have because we made a decision 6 months ago. That means you can't. That can't happen.
The first and major decision was the entryway.
And I think you guys landed in the right space on that. That should be a no compromise. It has to be built out that way. It's the right thing to do.
I agree with that.
Same.
Yeah.
I have another, can I go down a detailed question rabbit hole? Sorry. So I don't know who I'm asking this to, but as you guys were talking, you put up the priority 3 components. And I guess I'm curious, as we go down the RFP bid process, whatever, have we thought about the prioritization of those priority 3s? Or is it all the priority 3s that were listed on there are all going to be done and all in scope for that million?
Yeah, so all the priority 3 items that were listed there, the gymnasium, the theater space, the art room, that's in the base scope. In scope, right? With additional bid savings or supplemental funding, we might be able to do more, right? Some of these other spaces. What's that?
Scott,
Well, Skylar, I think Skylar's might be in still,
Yeah.
but from a programmatic perspective, the committee will make a decision on what other programs can be added back to the scope. Based upon, and I'll just, one other note is, we still have another round of estimating to do. This isn't the last estimate we're going to receive. We'll do another one probably in a couple of months. When we get a little more detailed documents, so we'll have new information, new data to help frame, where we want to be in September. To go on that road.
And I want to emphasize again, from what I'm hearing from you, the whole building is going to have brand new HVAC. The whole
Yep.
building is going to have brand new windows.
Yep.
Right?
New roof.
But yeah. so-
Accessibility,
Yeah, it's just those
Abated.
interior finishes for different uses for the room that would be limited based on funds available after you get through the majority of the project.
This is a bit of a tangent, but I just thought I'd ask, because we talked about state of the art a lot. The recital space, which is what we're officially calling it now, recital space,
You stop calling it.
is that the compromise?
That's,
That's
yeah.
fine.
Recital?
That is perfect town meeting space.
Yeah,
When you say state of the art, will it have the virtual meeting capabilities wired
Wi-Fi.
into it?
it'll
Like
have the
Zoom.
infrastructure, but
Yeah.
depending upon what we do with that, remember that.
We can take these
budget?
TVs and move them down there, that's not a
Then
problem.
you'll have it.
yeah.
But no, I mean, the infrastructure will be there, but whether or not the funds are there for new monitors, for the actual equipment itself, that's to be determined. That depends on what we do with that $700,000 or a portion thereof. To fund some of the other costs.
So right now, just so I understand, the $700,000 is part of the 15. Right?
Yes, 100%.
So in theory, you could say, we're gonna take $300,000 and put it towards construction to get
Sure.
one more room done.
Yep.
But we could still leave $400,000, because I'm just thinking, you have a $700,000 FF&E budget for the whole building.
Yeah.
But we're only gonna have 3 rooms or 4 rooms completed, so it wouldn't seem to make sense at one point that you, if we're in that state, you would redirect some of the funds to complete more.
It's not all
right?
around.
So-
You can take a portion and the building committee has access. to
And
all
that's
of it.
where you have to go through and say, okay, we're gonna have these rooms open, we gotta make sure that we have things for those rooms. And then what's left over there, we could apply to, painting and flooring in a classroom that people could use for meetings or something like that.
When we were going through the building, we spent a lot of time looking at the peeled back portions of the floor
Yes.
that are revealing the maple and
Yeah.
at the original maple floors. Is it reasonable to think that getting back to those is something we can do?
It's viable, yes. I mean, there's a cost to it, just like, you demo it and you demo what's below and then you gotta sand it and prep it, but I think that's a strong reality.
They were beautiful. I mean,
Mhm.
really stunning when you start looking around, so. One other area that I can't remember if it was in your presentation or not, so refresh me, the septic. So can you just talk a little bit about what we're doing from that perspective? And is that in the budget or not?
I can't.
It's in the
Yes.
budget.
So, there were a lot of discussions about it, but the very original concept, multiple years ago, almost before we went out to RFQ for architects, the concept and the estimates were to reuse the existing septic with the building. When we got into it, we discovered that the septic had really fallen into disrepair. It's not being used. We're increasing the occupancy of the building. The decision was, we really can't preserve this. We need to provide a new septic. Then, as we were talking with the local sanitarian and do our engineering calculations, it really came to light that the septic is serving other buildings on the campus. And the other buildings have bits and pieces of septic. So if we're building a septic system, it's in the best interest of the community to build a septic system that is new and will meet the needs of the adjacent facilities. So the new septic system will also pick up effluent from the other buildings in the campus.
But to that point, and I guess Peggy and others, should that reside in this current budget or should that be separate? I guess to the point of it serving other buildings, what the voters voted on was 15.94 academy, not necessarily for other budgets. So again, I'm just throwing it out there. I don't know. Is that
But I
something
guess my
creative we should be
question
thinking
is
about?
that the way the septic is as it stands right now, it couldn't even service Academy, correct?
There's no
So it would-
choice.
it would have to be
There's no-
replaced.
Yeah.
That's,
Right.
that's correct. So it has to be replaced to serve Academy. And you can, you could sort of throw stones about, well, what portion of it is to Academy and what portion of it serves the other buildings?
Yeah.
And what portion of the site requirements, because we did detailed site investigations and soils underneath the fields really aren't that great. And there's only a few areas where the septic fields, leaching fields can actually go. And well, how does that impact the cost and how are those costs distributed? I don't know. I think it's better to take it as a lump sum element. It's either in the Academy project, funding allocation, or it's not.
Right.
And I think that's at your pay grade. You
Yeah.
can make that decision.
Well, I mean, I think that's a discussion.
Her
that
pay
we can
grade,
have.
not our.
Her
Yeah.
pay grade.
Your volunteer hour rate, right?
Yeah, there was
Yeah.
actually a fairly detailed, fairly long discussion on it. And it came down to that the other buildings have no particular plan to change. And so adding that cost to other buildings that are on the site would not be what we would call fair. So that any cost of the new septic would have to be borne by Academy. Because it is built for Academy, and it will serve Academy. And whether that, as Tom said, is that a pay grade decision? That's another question. If we
Do you
want
have a sense
to
of-
revisit that.
Is it 75% for Academy and 25%? I mean, do you have any sense of that? or-
I wouldn't give you that. No.
Some-
I mean, I guess I look at it as all taxpayer dollars, right? They're all municipal buildings. So I think how we apportion it, if the board were to choose to say, well, maybe, CIP should pick up 25% of the cost because it's really addressing some issues with other buildings versus, so it frees up money in the Academy budget, we can have that conversation. for
Then
sure.
we need to talk
Yeah.
about what needs to move out
Yeah,
of CIP.
Yeah, so we just have to have that kind
Bingo.
of conversation. But I think that the messaging though is the septic is a septic and it's gonna get done, right? So, and that's something we as a board can decide
Yeah.
how we're gonna pay for it over the next month. I think you have to have, the septic there's no choice to keep the old septic system and
Totally,
just,
I understand.
and keep it isolated.
I'm just thinking of creative options, that's all.
Yeah,
So,
yeah, no, I mean, it is, but it is something that we're like, it is gonna help solve some problems for that whole area.
Sure.
And an investment that multiple buildings will be benefiting from, as we move forward, because it's kind of an overdue, necessary improvement that needs to be done down there.
Right, but like we've said, we wouldn't be talking about septic investment if we weren't talking about Academy, so.
Right.
Yeah, fair.
I think,
Yep.
I think for the sake of simplicity and keeping the conversation as unconfusing as possible, it really needs to be wrapped up in the bigger, in the project, so that when we talk about Academy, we're not saying, well, that's on a different ledger, don't worry about that. That's, it's, I think that starts to,
I tend to
That's
feel that
problematic for me
way
to do
as
that.
well, because you can't have a functioning building without the septic being done, and then CIP has so many projects in it, so then if you're taking money out of CIP, then you've really got to evaluate what projects are you cutting from CIP.
and to be fair, okay, so we're starting to get a little technical in our conversations. When we talk about CIP, this is money that's voted upon by the taxpayers. So the vehicle of CIP is a little bit less restrictive than a bonding path is. And we deal in it every year, but every year that spending comes to all of us to vote on. So this is not the Board of Selectmen or the Board of Finance or whoever is going to start moving money around and nobody's going to know about it. None of these conversations are like that.
Mhm.
These all end up in the ballot box.
And that was-
One may or another may.
That was also, it was a timing issue with Academy also, that these discussions are going to be necessary. And if we wait for those discussions, that's another delay. So if the discussion can be done quickly, that's fine. But in the meantime, it's Academy's, it's in Academy budget, and we're gonna move forward because we want Academy to move forward. And not have another pinch point where we have to wait for something.
Any other questions or comments? I mean, I think that it sounds like, we're excited to see you move forward and continue the design process. And then we look forward to seeing also that additional budget needed, funding needed, if we were for the completion of everything.
Right,
Right?
can somebody set our expectations on when we might see that? I'm kind of.
I know we said 2 weeks, give me a month. That'll give us time for 2 meetings and some time to talk to Tom. And maybe Tom needs longer than that, but he says no. But
So our May,
It'll-
our
it'll-
May evening meeting, if we don't call a special meeting before then, for it, is that? So our
Which
May
is-
evening meeting is, what, the 4th week of the month?
No, I mean, I think we're.
it's only, it's only like the 3rd of April, right? So a month
so
would
I
be,
think early May is what
Yeah,
we're talking
early
about,
May,
right?
like-
So,
So then we'll plan on a special meeting for that.
Maybe, 20th is our evening.
So
yeah, I
then
think
we'll-
we want earlier than
We'll,
that.
we'll
Maybe
plan
we
on
could
a
be
special meeting
6,
to hear that.
but we
Or
could
it can
move
even be
our
sent to us in
Tuesday-
advance of that meeting. but-
Yeah. So we could also do our Tuesday morning meeting, turn it into a evening meeting if you wanted to. So we'll talk about.
this is, the committee works on this 100% of our time, right? I don't do anything else. But on the other hand, we have resources like Tom and Mark.
If you read the
who have
fine
other
print in the
projects.
application you filled in.
Once you pass that check, oh yeah. you
So-
did make a check.
So there may be some constraints that we have to work around.
Right.
If they're available.
Right, okay. Okay, so I think we're good, yeah, thank you. We look forward to the follow-up. We do have the next section is on citizens' comments. And obviously we have a lot of people here. And we have a lot online, so I guess typically it's public comment, it's not a back and forth. If there's gonna be questions, we'll note them and we'll try to respond to them later. But we want everybody to have the chance to share their opinions, obviously. But I do ask that, you state your name and address, and then you limit your comments to 2 minutes if possible. You can also submit them in writing. If you're tired, you don't want to wait around or whatever, you can submit them to my office and we'll include them as part of the public comment for this meeting and the meeting minutes. So,
Can I just
Yep.
add one thing? If we hear maybe 5 in a row that are all of the same perspective, if we could then deliberately poll the audience to say to somebody have something different to say,
Yeah.
something new to say. We'll get to everybody, but if we can make sure that we're hearing all the different
and
colors.
I think we'll start with hands raised in the room, and then we'll shift to online. So we'll do some in the room, and then we'll go online, and we'll kind of go back and forth, just so, both groups are getting. So with that, Jeannie, I guess, let me start within the room. Could you please raise your hands if you have a comment to make? And, okay, we got several people here. Okay, so we'll start over here because I know you.
Thank you.
Yep.
So certainly the Academy building.
State your
Name
name.
and
Oh, I'm sorry, my name is
That's
Rory
okay.
Friedler, and I'm a Madison resident. So, certainly the Academy building is a beautiful building that is very deserving of being fully restored. It looks like you guys have that aspect of it on their reps. However, I'm just wondering, I mean, we spent all this time in here today talking about the nuances of the building. I'm assuming there were no one in the private sector that were willing to take on that job. I'm assuming there wasn't someone in the private sector who wanted to restore the building to where it is. So it ended up in the public sector. So what is it, because this was not discussed tonight and I'm not aware of what's behind it. What is it that this community center, who is it going to service? And how is it that it's providing something that between the art center, the high school, and other facilities, it's not being met, it's not, the services are not met for the community. So that is my question.
Okay, and so we're not really responding to questions, but I will direct, because there's a lot of information about what went to referendum. on the website. This is one of the presentations that was given about the community center, who it's going to serve. There's a whole, if you go to the website, there's a whole section on Academy, and it has tons of stuff in it. There's an explanatory text, and there's the presentation, there's polls, there's community surveys, there's the work that was done by the advisory committee about what the community wants from this. So I just recommend that if people have questions relating to the community center programming and purpose and things like that, then I would suggest they go to the website.
Yeah,
So, but thank you for your comment.
Yeah.
And
thank you.
next, back, we'll just work our way.
Andy Valambroso. Scott, nice to meet you. Finally
Hey.
meet you in person.
Nice to meet you.
Couple things. Your opening statement was that the petition was illegitimate. I'm not gonna really address it. I'll let the attorneys, I was still point man. I'll let the attorneys that drew it up, follow up on it. One concern I have is the septic system. It's a serious problem, okay? The leaching fields and the septic systems under the playing fields where they play ball and stuff. Okay, and the predominant soil is peat, which is decayed vegetation. Okay, you have to remove all that, even to think about getting a septic system in there. And the cost to do that is astronomical. I believe that your cost for this project isn't even close to get anywhere near done. Okay, I was in the business a long time ago, building inspector. Those are my concerns with this whole thing. The building was built in 1884. Okay, that's an old building.
1920.
Okay, 1884. I think it was,
1920.
no, they did renovations in 1921 and also in 1935. I spent months researching this whole project for everybody. I think it's money well spent to put it somewhere else. It's a nice building. You've got serious radon problems in the area. You've got serious asbestos problems inside. You've got serious lead problems inside and out. All that lead paint from the windows and everything that's going into the soil. All that soil's got to be, the abatement of getting rid of all that is going to be astronomical. And I just think you should reconsider that building. I would sell it. Let a private investor come in and develop it, get some tax revenue in the state, in the town, and get everybody's taxes down. I'm worried about the seniors in this town. The costs for them staying here is going to be unaffordable. That's it. Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Jim Schmaltz, Madison. So I've been following this from the beginning. I'm in the trades. I didn't think it was a realistic budget to begin with. I still don't think it's a realistic budget, even what we're looking at now. Just an abatement, the abatement numbers that we're talking about aren't going to be even close. I FOIA'd a bunch of the documents. The abatement numbers that they're talking about are from 2018. It was over $800,000. That was the inside of the building. It wasn't for lead paint removal. It was only to meet OSHA requirements. It was $5,000. There's cloth wiring, all needs to be removed, means all the walls have to be opened up. The tin ceilings are either going to be gone because they're lead paint, or you're going to have to restore them. So you're talking about, are we gutting the inside and building a community center? You're also talking about, oh, we're going to restore the character of the building. In your documents in 2018, you're only spending $5,000. You're going to paint over the lead paint. That's not what you should be doing. So you're either going to replace it all with plastic, or you're going to go through and spend 5 times that just to get the paint off and make it a restoration. You're talking about the gym floors. The gym floors are unrealistic, right? So you have maple floors. Maple floors have glue in them that has asbestos fibers holding down asbestos tiles. So you're going to tear all of that out. To do Gym floor here was $400,000. The budget for the entire building, before anything started happening, we were looking at 45,000 square feet, was just over 500,000. You're $10 a square foot to finish all of the floors in the building. If you find somebody that can come out and do $10 a foot flooring in the house, let us know who it is. That's not realistic. 120,000 to paint, you can't paint for 120,000. On the floors, you're tearing out all the asbestos, you're gonna have to level the floors. That's very expensive, right? The entire process, and you look back, you go back to, you know, the 20 years. The problem with the building is it's a raised ranch. It doesn't work. That's why you can't use it as a school. So now you have an elevator that's gonna hold how many people? That's the only way to go up and down unless you're using stairs. It's on the inside of the building, so that's nice, but it's not a good functional building.
Okay, thank you very much.
Yeah, you also would need to start to put together some more time where we can have questions answered in public, rather than sending it to you and everybody having to follow up. We're a town meeting form of government, we're the legislative branch, we need to start being considered in these things. We also need to be able to vote via Zoom. You know, if you can't.
Okay, I understand, but tonight we're talking about the Academy project.
Okay, so.
And you've made your comments about the budgets. I will make a comment to refer you that there's a very different, they've had multiple professionals going through, coming up with the estimates that we have now.
I've got them all, and those are the numbers that I'm giving you.
So,
Okay, they have two estimates, they go in the middle.
You
You know,
you
so
made your,
I
you
want
made your
you-
statement.
You can't
So,
contradict me, okay? We need to be able to have a back and forth. Can you commit that we can meet with the architects and Colliers and actually have a
That is
public
not the purpose
conversation?
of this meeting. The
I'm
purpose of
asking,
this.
right, I'm asking, can we have a meeting that is the purpose of?
We
Would you be okay
we
with
will
that?
review what the.
No, I'm
options
asking
will be
you.
going
You're the
No,
selectwoman.
I'm not responding to you. We're moving
Oh.
on. You've had time to speak, and we'll figure out how we're gonna move this conversation further to answer people's questions. But it's not gonna happen tonight. So
And the-
please sit down and we'll move on. to
I'm
other
asking, can we
people.
set up a
And
time to
well,
do
the
that?
building committee's meetings are all open
Yeah,
meetings
the
too.
building committee's meeting, there's also opportunity. for
building
public
committee's the
comment at
same way.
building committee. So.
You can't ask questions, it's comment only. We need a public
So
question
generally,
forum.
when, I will say that generally when questions are submitted to the board, we try to respond as quickly as possible. I know I always respond to things in my office
I've never
and we
gotten a
will
response
respond.
from you.
ever. I've never received.
So, Peggy,
Okay, so I think it's time to move on.
Yeah,
Please
if
take
I
a
could
seat.
maybe just comment one thing. I think in keeping with past practice, the Board of Selectmen, whenever it's weighed important issues, has gone out and sought that back and forth with the public, and I certainly would imagine that might happen.
And that
Just
is what we
speaking-
did
Speaking
with this
amongst us.
project multiple times before it was voted on by the
So-
public, so. But moving on, we have a
And
lot of
again, that
people
was a
that,
comment
there's a
only
lot,
section.
there's a lot of people that want to have something to say tonight, so let's move on.
Catherine Hunter. I want to just tell a lot of folks in the audience that this has been going on for 17 years. 17 years.
2015.
This academy is probably the most examined, surveyed, voted on, and reported project in the history of this town. There's thousands of pages out there on Academy. And for everyone, and I don't doubt your expertise, who's wondering about the level of examination of this, we've had professionals and volunteers for years and years and years and years. There have been multiple committees who have gone through this, and each and every time have come back to the same conclusions. So, so I just want you to know that there is tons of information, and for anyone who thinks that perhaps there are pieces missing to this, I myself worked on it for 7 years.
Anything
7
can
years.
be built if you want to spend the
So,
money.
okay, so here's the comment, so I just wanted to kind of throw that out there.
Yeah.
I have some questions about the funding sources in the referendum. I understand from the language of the referendum that the grant monies are supposed to reduce the bonding. I am wondering if that's all of the grant monies. I'm also wondering if the way that the referendum was structured and the specific language of the referendum if it's possible that any of the monies that are received that are not specifically for construction may supplement and not reduce the bonds. Secondly, zoom out, drone view. If we're talking about the difference between 15.9 million and 22 million to get it done, and some of the, or 17 million to get it done, and the bonding is 15.9, and the grant monies are 8 and counting. What's the spread? I mean, Bruce asked the question, but if the whole project, the way it went to referendum, is 18 million, that's different than if it's 22 million or 25 million. I think that's something that would be very important to know as you move into the project. I'd like to also reiterate that there were discussions for years about other sources of funding, and some aspects of this project are ripe for personal and private fundraising. Look at what the folks did with the surf club, the bleachers. Look at what folks have done with specific other projects in town. Something like at the library too. There have been groups that have gone out and sought specific sources of funding and who also have started private fundraising. I think the little theater, which is now being called what, the reception, is a perfect opportunity for that. Some of the FF&E stuff, perfect opportunities for that. I would also say, is there any opportunities at Colliers for some of the reserve line item to be a happy surprise at the end? You know, there's a percentage that's usually done for the reserve on a construction budget. Is there any opportunity for that money to come in? I'd like to reiterate what Scott was saying all along, which is that until we actually have the bids in, there's no reason to think that there couldn't be enough money to spread to some of these other rooms. And finally, I would like to reiterate that time is money. And a good portion of the cost overruns here have been because of time. And that's not to impugn in any way the committee or the volunteers on this, but time is money.
Further comment?
Dick Buller, Opening Hill Road. I'm also the chair of the Madison Family Services Board. And as a taxpayer, I'm thrilled with the progress. I'm thrilled to see a school that 2 of my children had the opportunity to go through, finally move out of this state of disrepair and move towards actually serving a purpose for the community again. It's a wonderful building, and I commend the work that's been done by the building committee and the advisory committee and the board itself. I do want to just say that I'm, as the chair of NYFS, I am disappointed, as you can imagine, to see that they're not going to be slotted into phase 1 unless the budgeting does change. And I just ask that you consider the space needs and work on a contingent plan if that doesn't turn out to be a phase 1 opportunity, because unfortunately the mental health needs of our youth have only gotten exacerbated by COVID and the whole pandemic. It hasn't gotten any better, and the needs have only increased over the past few years.
Thank you. Why don't we go to online for a bit? We will come back to it. So we haven't answered. Let's see if there's any hands raised online.
Peggy, there is someone who's typed in questions. I don't even want to give them an opportunity to read them.
Yeah, why don't you go ahead and read the question, and we can't answer it, so you can just read the question. I'm just looking here. Looks like wow.
Well, then before we
can
just
come back
read
to the
questions, why don't we come
Yeah.
back to the room?
Yeah, we'll come back to the room, and then and I know this woman over here.
We're going in.
Yep. If you want to, we're going back to the room, please. Please state your name and address.
Dana, Madison, Connecticut. I don't doubt that a lot of work went into this project. It's obvious it did. However, with everything else going on in this town and the state of the economy such as it is, there's an awful lot of money being extracted. And let's think for 1 second, you talk about grants. Grants come from the state. Where do you think that money comes from? That comes from our taxes. Okay, so no matter what, this money comes from our taxes. And I feel like we don't need a recital room. What's the library for? There's a whole thing in this magazine that we all got of all the things that the library can do, cooking classes, art classes, yoga classes, why do we need a community center to do that? Okay? It's gone above and beyond, and it's out of control. I am all for preserving things, but I'm also old school. If you don't have the money, you don't buy it. Fair enough. I mean, come on. How much more? It's crystal clear that this is not going to be $15.9 million. It's gonna go above that. How much more are you willing to ask from us?
About 40 million.
You know, it's ludicrous. I'm not gonna be able to afford to live here much longer, and that's not fair. It's not fair. And I can speak for a lot of the people in this town that feel the same way. Stop the ridiculous spending. Stop. It needs to end.
Affordable housing said there was 1 in 4 working poor families in Madison.
Right.
Keep those in mind as well.
Yeah, I mean, this is like, again, I'm all for, if you took that building and did something constructive with it, we don't need a community center where everybody's gonna go and like have tea and do yoga. We have plenty of places to do that.
Right.
We have the library, we have the senior center, we have this area. You know, we've got a brand new school. What's happening, you know, with that? Where does the bleeding stop? It's gotta stop.
Okay, thank you very much.
Dana, what was your last name for the
I
record?
prefer not to say.
Well, it's-
You have to have it.
Well, I have one more thing to say.
Their addresses when they, you say your addresses when you talk?
We're supposed to?
No, do you ever?
No, because we're elected officials. Scott Murphy, 62 Nursery Lane. Yeah, okay.
But it's the past practice, and I think it's even.
Just a little
statutory-
intimidating for people, I
It is
think, and I like to speak up for them because I feel that way too, so.
One of the obvious things is that the last thing we want is a room full of Guilford people speaking on behalf of Madison people.
Understood. I don't know if there's any of those in here. Guilford?
So, and this is all on the public record.
You know, one more thing, just, and this is important. I think Jim and I disagree on a lot of things, but I agree with him on this. He absolutely is right. We should have a question and answer. Well, you know, we're allowed to speak, but you guys aren't allowed to answer us? That's like, what kind of like dog and pony show is this anyway? It's ridiculous.
Well, I'll make a general comment. We set up a lot of time. This project had a lot of community conversations on it. If the board wants to have, and of course, if we're gonna be proceeding in terms of spending any money, we always have those conversations. We have not even just a town meeting, we have a public information session. We've had a lot of back and forth on Academy over the last many years. And it's been interactive, but tonight's purpose was not to have a community conversation to relitigate something that was actually voted on by the people already under a plan. This was a discussion about where the budget's getting us in that plan right now, and that's the purpose of tonight's meeting. So you're welcome to have your, state your concerns, and we've noted that. And so we just want to let some other people speak. There's a hand raised behind you.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Yes,
Hi.
go ahead.
Good evening, everyone. Sheila Valambroso. I just have a question for you. You know, there's a lot of language being shared tonight in regard to this, renovation. To me, it's all R2D2 language, I'll be honest with you, okay? But what I need to know from perhaps you, and maybe you can't answer me right now, is beyond this and we build a building, what's the cost analysis that's going to be there, that's going to cost the town of Madison and the taxpayers of Madison in regard to the maintenance, the lights, the heating, the insurance? Where is the money coming from there? And that's coming from what I'm hearing, maybe from us, okay? I mean, our taxes just went up. We're gonna see something coming down the pike in the next couple of, I know my taxes went up 60–70%, and I'm not gonna see that maybe until April. Hopefully the mill rate will drop a little bit and things will even off. But, what's the cost analysis? And maybe I missed that, and maybe it's not on the website, to maintain this building. It's one thing to build it and spend the 15, 16, 18 million to build it. But what's it gonna cost us on an annual basis to maintain this between the staff that's in here and the heating and the insurance? That's all. That's what I wanted to ask. Because it's basically in the long run gonna come out of our pockets. That's it.
Good question.
Any other hands raised?
Couple. It's a simple question.
Name and address.
Oh, Alan Friedler in Madison, Connecticut. Is there any planning for revenue generation from this particular building, or is that not part of it?
I couldn't hear because
Is there anything in the plans for some type of revenue generation as a result of the building. Because, kind of makes sense, you should have some kind of plan for that.
So, once again, a lot of this was discussed in public conversation many times. There has been discussion about the cost of the building. There's been discussion about the revenue plan for the building. The programming is people are gonna have to pay for the programming. So that's all been part of the public conversation for a while. So there is discussion about all that. Any other hands raised? Yes.
Jared, Madison, Connecticut. The grant money that we got from the state, federal, I guess it's state money. I just want to know the stipulations. I think all the taxpayers would like to know the stipulations for taking that money. Do we have to do anything by taking that money?
That information will be forthcoming. We'll share that with you, but there are grant agreements the town does sign. We have not seen federal grant agreements yet. The state grant agreement was signed over a year ago, and they go through a public process and they're voted on by both the Board of Selectmen and Board of Finance before we accept any grant. So it is a public approval process that we go through.
Garrett, what was your last name? I want to give that. Alrighty.
Any other, I will check back, I guess, for if there's any online hands. I just kind of find it unusual that there's no one online. Oh, one came up. I spoke too quickly, so. So go ahead, Jeannie, if you want to allow the online.
Hi there. Thank you all so much for all your hard work with this project. My name is Beth Azaveda. I'm at 81 Silo Hill in Madison. I just want to say I'm a new resident as of summer 2022, and I'm thrilled to hear about this project. As a member of the Madison Newcomers Club, we struggle to find community spaces for us to meet. I've already traveled to Guilford and Clinton to their community centers for activities, and there is no space like that here. We are desperately needing a place to gather, and this proposed plan and plans tonight shown are just incredible. I think it will help us build our community more and provide for the next generations to come. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Any other hands raised online? Back to the room. One more chance in the room. Any other hands raised? Yes?
Sure. If it's all right, can I use the podium?
Do it.
Just, I don't want
Go
to,
for it.
I don't want to have my back to my fellow residents. George Nawatney, I'm 54 Bishop Lane, Mass. I'll try to be brief, and some of this has been covered, but I just furiously scribbling some notes. So my appreciation of the committee, the designers, and consultants on this project, I think you've made the best of what you can of this thing. And regardless of my personal position on this project, the voters have spoken, and that's democracy in action, and I accept that. I accept the vote that was in favor of this, so I'm not going to question that. And finally, as an alumnus of Academy Street School way back in the day, I went 3 grades there and I spent 6 years, so. Still bad at math. Anyway, and I've been involved in public building projects for many years. And I know the market goes up and down, and it's crazy at times. This is one of those times. So, so again, no fault anywhere. I think everybody's doing this with the best interests of the town in mind. But I am a little concerned that if you're going to build some of it, there's an old saying in public building projects: if you start the project, the taxpayers will have to finish it. So that's my concern. And my point here is that I would urge the town to go to referendum if we're gonna have a scope creep in the future. And I'm not trying to push anything on anybody or say that anything's going on, other than I think it's great to get all these costs out and let people vote on them the way they want, up or down, or whatever they like. And one of the couple final things, I'd hope in the use of this building, there's no fiefdoms. So I hope that people can reserve rooms for almost any number of things, and we're not going to say, oh, that room's dedicated to X and that room's dedicated to Y. That this is a true community center. It can be used for any purpose, and nobody has a right to the space any more than any other group in town. And as one of my final points is, I'll just point out that grants are great. I think they're wonderful, but they are taxpayer money still. So whether it comes from DC or Hartford or wherever it comes from, we all pay enough in taxes, and I just, I'm all for using them when we can, but I just, I try to draw the distinction that it's still somewhere coming out of everybody's pocket in this room. So thank you for your time.
Thank you. We do have a hand raised online. So why don't we move to online again? Jeannie, can you
They got it on.
also?
Sorry.
Oh, it's up, okay.
TV is on.
Yes, hi, Terry Van Endolder, 17 Bartlett Drive. I have a couple of comments. I think the term community center is a misnomer because such a large portion, over 1/3 of the usable space, is being scoped out for municipal offices, transferring from other buildings, and that is not what the people voted on. That is not what the survey showed they wanted. Secondly, septic system upgrade costs for Academy Building and surroundings in the surrounding buildings should not be considered later. Would you ever build a house where you didn't have a septic system budgeted? You wouldn't. Okay. The Academy Building should generate revenue. This is something that the public wanted in the survey. And by moving municipal buildings or municipal offices into that building, you are therefore taking away that opportunity by 1/3 of that building. That is, again, not what the public wanted. Stipulations on accepting the grant money, the public needs to know, front and center, put it in the source newspaper without wordsmithing and creative writing glossing the requirements over. Just the facts, please. Also, in the Board of Selectmen discussion, a comment was made that summer is not an ideal time to have a standalone referendum. I vehemently disagree. Why wouldn't summer be the best time to have a standalone referendum when the greatest majority of residents are in place in town versus November or any other time of the year when those who are seasonal residents are not in town and hence will not be able to vote on a referendum requesting increases in funding to the Academy project ask? It seems that burying a referendum vote in the calendar to a time when a large portion of residents are away from the area and will not have the opportunity to vote on a referendum is a strategic political move designed to manipulate or secure the outcome versus have a vote that is representative of the voting Madison population. And I applaud those who stood up in the audience and had the courage to say what they had about the ridiculousness of the cost of this and how it has changed from what it was originally supposed to be. You can see all of my questions as I typed on the Q&A in Zoom. I look forward to hearing your responses.
Carrie, I guess one last round of questions here in the room. There will be more opportunity for this as the board will be having probably a public information session.
Can I just make one quick
moving
comment?
forward,
Because I missed something. She brought up a very good point. I missed this. I'm really upset that I missed this.
Can you just remind people who you are? and your address?
Andy Valabroso.
Yeah. There's people listening, so.
Is it a fact that you guys are leaving out the septic system?
No, it's in right now. It's in scope.
It's in scope.
It is in scope.
It is in scope.
So that was a misunderstanding.
Because she made a comment that.
Yeah.
That was it.
No, it's in scope.
How would you get a CO if you didn't get the septic?
No,
system?
we have to have a septic.
Right?
So.
Okay, thank you.
Yep, okay, last public comment and then we'll. end the meeting.
What really should be happening is we need to have a budget put together for everything that this is gonna cost. It needs to be realistic, it needs to have all the, soil samples done, or not done, but evaluated what it's gonna cost. There were just reports that we got beginning of this year in January that showed there's well contamination. We've got to look at the creek on that. We've also got to pull up, the soil around the building, get rid of the lead there.
Yep.
Decide whether it's going to be a restoration or a rebuild, what's the way we want to go. Any costs that are gonna be affiliated with the building need to be put into this number, whether it goes into CIP, which, you know, is 10 years out, you got 50 million in school budget in there, on top of everything else. The referendum vote, originally, it wasn't overwhelming. It was like 400 and something votes. It was just over, it wasn't 60%. It was 50-something% in favor of. I just looked it up after you said it, because I'm like, that's not right. The referendum also included finance costs, interest, all of the expenses. We've already spent hundreds of thousands of dollars, or at least 100,000 to date on this. So that's not 15.9, it's 15.8. The cost of the bonding needs to come off. We also need to be realistic. I was doing the math on what bond coupons are going for now. It was like 3.35. So I mean, taking the bonds off, which is in the referendum, it's not an option. You're bonding out $8 million. You have how many millions in interest on top of that? You know, is it, I think it was 3 or 4 million, borrow 8 million on a 20-year bond or a 23-year bond. So when you start doing these maths, you know, you're going to realistically be a $30 million project on top of a $90 million school project that is going to be what, $2 million a year in interest alone. And then you have $50 million in CIP for other school repairs. You know, the numbers you were talking about didn't have solar, didn't have geothermal. The complete HVAC for that entire building was less than the geothermal upgrade using all the existing ductwork here. So I mean, give us a number, say it's going to be a $30 million project, vote yes. If it's a no vote, the project's canceled, we're back to the beginning. And maybe the building isn't supposed to be here. You know, maybe that's realistic. You didn't want to do it on the November ballot in 2020. COVID hit, maybe it was karma. It would have been voted on it in November if you did it on the ballot. It would have either been done or the building would have been finished. The interest rate would have been 1. You know, so you got to look at what, you know, what's karma telling you here.
Thank you for your comment. With that, I guess,
Move to adjourn.
So moved. All in favor, say aye.